Hey, what's going on? Welcome to Coffee with Max. I'm your host, Max. This is my first couple of sips of coffee. Bear with me, I'm still waking up a little bit. I don't know what it was. I don't know how many of you guys are in Boulder, but the crickets last night were on something else. They were so loud. In fact, they were so loud that I could have swore one of them was in my house. Turns out it was. It was upstairs, and I think it's stuck in the AC. I'm not positive, but I feel for that little guy. Oh, they're so loud. Anyway, crickets aside, today I want to talk about the subconscious mind because I think it's such an interesting thing for music. It's so cool. I've been using kind of processes and tricks to try and access my subconscious mind as inspired by the one and only Quincy Jones. He talks about that a lot in his book. There's one called Q on Producing, and then also he mentions it in his autobiography. I'm a huge Quincy Jones fan, if you haven't figured that out. He's an EGOT. Did you know that? Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, Tony. Crazy. So anyway, he talks about accessing the subconscious mind when you're writing music, and he would actually, so some of the scores that he did, like The Color Purple, he tells stories about laying on the floor until like 4 a.m, falling asleep, trying to write music for this movie score, waking up and having it in his head and just writing it out. And I think that's so interesting. And we can kind of talk about overthinking stuff too, but I'm sure a lot of you guys have been in the situation of writing a song or I'm playing music and I'm thinking about it too much. I'm critiquing myself too much, and now I am totally shut down. All my creativity gets shut down. So I'm sure you've been in that situation before. So I want to tell you a story because it's kind of cool, I think. 2 stories. So I was in this band called Eat the Sun when I was in high school, and they were this kind of prog metal rock psychedelic, really really fun kind of King Crimson sort of style band, all instrumental. Well, they did some screaming vocals, but we won't get into that. And we had a show at the Fox. Finally, like we'd been working so hard. I'd been practicing with them through high school, and we had this show at the Fox, and so we were practicing all the time, trying to get clean as possible. And the day of the show comes up, and stage is set, and there's actually some people there because the band after us had a bit of a following. We had some following, but I think a lot of those people were there to see the band after us. And we had been doing our job, selling tickets and the whole thing. So there was a good amount of people there. And, I'll get not nervous, but anxious and excited and a little bit nervous before shows. But I felt this other kind of brain thing happening when I went on stage that night. And I wasn't nervous. I wasn't really excited. I was just kind of calm, like at peace and relaxed. And it was really interesting. I went up and I started playing, and it was this feeling of almost blacking out. Like I didn't know what was happening. I was playing the drums. It was almost like I was watching myself play the drums from the lens of my own brain. Really, really weird. And so I looked it up, and it turns out this is called like a flow state. So if you haven't heard of a flow state before, go check that out. It's really interesting. I think it's defined as the perfect combination of challenge, but also being able to complete that challenge. So for example, if you have a really, really easy task, you won't go into a flow state because it's too easy. If you have a really hard task that is preventing you from moving forward in it, you won't go into a flow state. But if you enter this perfect balance of challenge and I guess completion, like getting through that task, you sometimes will enter a flow state, which is just this, it's really cool. The Beatles talk about it a little bit. You can look online and look up flow state, and there's a bunch of articles about it. It's really interesting. So I had that experience. I had one other one, which was not at a show, but it was when I used to play in the Boulder Symphony Orchestra. We were playing the Planets, and we were playing, which part was it? It's Holst the Planets. It has a bunch of different movements. I think it was Saturn. I think the movement was Saturn. And it was me and my old drum teacher, Aaron, and we were playing the two timpani parts. So this piece is written in a way so that in order to play it, you have to have two timpanists. You have one person on 4 drums and another person on 3, or 2 on 3, or 2 on 4, or something like that. And the parts kind of interlock. And if you play them right, it creates this really cool rhythmic pattern between the two people. And I just remember being in I remember being in that room practicing and playing this part, and then entering that state and be like, whoa, like, did somebody put something in my water? I swear to God, I'm sitting there like, what is happening right now? Because I entered that state again where you're like, you're not thinking, you're not planning to do anything, you're just observing what you know what to do. It's really, really cool. It's really interesting. So I think that's your subconscious coming through. I think that's your subconscious kind of dominating the conscious mind. And turns out this will happen more often at night, which is when your conscious mind kind of starts to fatigue a little bit. You might notice that you're more creative at night. That's kind of when the subconscious starts to come through. So I just think that's super interesting. So an exercise for you, something to try if you want to try and experience this a little bit. I was telling my buddy yesterday, my my nightly ritual recently is I have this long ass headphone cord. It goes from here all the way to my bed, which is all the way over there. And I set up a playlist on Spotify. I'll link it in the bottom if you want to check it out. It's called Non-Classical Symphonic. That's just my preference. I'm not crazy about a lot of the classical music, but I love the orchestral sound. So it's like classical, it's not classical, it's romantic, it's post-romantic, it's contemporary orchestral music. It's really beautiful. And I'll go and lay down with my headphones, my big Quincy Jones signature series, and listen to music until I fall asleep. And it's the coolest thing because as you're getting into that state of actually being asleep, the music starts to sound totally different. And a really good one is Hector Berlioz's Symphonie Fantastique. And you start to like see the story or hear the story. It's really, 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 really cool. It's amazing. So anyway, I'll link that in the bottom. Check that out if you want to see it. In the comments. Why am I saying in the bottom? In the comments. No, in the description. In the description. The box that's under this box. The second box. Good God. So anyway, I would love to hear your experiences with the subconscious and music and creativity, kind of what you think about that. I think that totally relates with overthinking things, and really, if you want to write something and write something good, you want to think about it as little as possible. And this will be a future video, but that's kind of, I think, where people get into I'll have a little bit of a drink and it'll make it easier for me to write or something like that. I don't know how much I agree with that, but I do think that if you can write freely without criticizing yourself or thinking and just let that stuff come out and then edit the next day with a little bit more of a critical mind, that's when you get the best music. So that's a quote I've heard is write drunk, edit sober, I think is how it goes, and that makes sense to me. Anyway, thank you for joining Coffee with Max. I hope you enjoyed. Really appreciate you guys tuning in, and let me know if you have any questions or comments, concerns, criticisms, critiques, opinions. Cheers.